"Get off the lake now." That's the first thing she screamed at my guests before they even had a chance to set down a single fishing rod. And I swear the whole neighborhood could hear her boots thudding as she stomped across my deck. Imagine trying to grill ribs in peace while your friend's one of them, a widower, bringing his kids out for a little healing, just want to fish. And suddenly this woman climbs up on my table like she owns the place, barking orders like she's some kind of military police. My chest was pounding. Kids looked ready to cry, and I was 1 second away from losing it. Comment what you'd have done, because I was about to snap. Weekend mornings by the lake were supposed to be my sanctuary. Hickory smoke drifting from the grill, ribs cooking slow, sun spilling across the water. My wooden steps led straight down to where Dean had docked his boat. His kids, Lucy and Noah, stood at the edge of the dock bouncing with excitement, arguing over rods and talking big about how many fish they'd catch. Lucy was only 8, her pigtails bouncing as she pointed toward the deeper water like she knew where all the fish were hiding. Noah was 10, trying to act older, explaining casting techniques with all the confidence of a kid who'd probably only watched one YouTube video on it. For the first time in months, those two actually looked happy. Dean's wife had passed just 3 months earlier, and this fishing trip was supposed to be about giving the kids a break from grief. But right as they were settling in, that peace shattered. Meline stormed onto the deck, stomped right up onto our picnic table, shoes smearing grease prints across the wood while plates of ribs sat there. She jabbed her finger at Dean's family and shouted about unauthorized guests. And before I could even argue, the sound of a bullhorn cracked across the lake. A canoe rushed in from across the water. 3 adults paddling like it was some kind of emergency rescue. Crooked safety patrol decals slapped on the sides like cheap stickers. And there she was again, Meline, Pierce sitting in the stern, wearing a Lake Wellness Day polo, clutching that bullhorn like it was a weapon. Unregistered guests must leave immediately per HOA emergency protocols. Her voice cut through the morning air, scattering birds from the trees. The 2 volunteers in the canoe looked miserable, glancing at each other like, what did we get ourselves into? They blocked Dean's boat with their canoe, kids still clutching fishing rods with hands starting to shake. Dean's jaw tightened at serve in the military, so I could see him calculating responses, but with those kids standing there, you could tell his priority was keeping them calm. Meline's voice barked out again about liability and safety, throwing around phrases that sounded official but had no real weight behind them. I'd had enough. My voice came out steadier than I felt, slow and deliberate. You're standing on private property. The way she froze mid-word, like she'd seen a ghost, told me I'd hit the mark. Her bullhorn lowered. The volunteers stopped paddling, and even the breeze seemed to pause. Then the lake dropped just enough to reveal faded blue survey lines on the rocks marks placed there decades ago when the original survey was done. I saw her eyes follow mine, and in that moment her confidence cracked. She pulled out her phone with shaky hands, and soon everyone's devices buzzed with emergency alerts, fake ones, warning about lake safety violations. Later that weekend, we got more, even during dinner. That's when my wife, Mia, who had spent years working in county land records, started digging. She spread out old survey photos and receipts across the table, pointing out the marks we'd seen on the rocks. Dean filmed them for evidence, but it was Noah, 10 years old and sharp as a tack, who noticed something the rest of us had missed. Uncle Clark. This alert came from her personal account. Isn't that wrong? He was right. Emergency alerts were supposed to come from county systems, not one woman's cell phone. Our neighbor, a retired 911 dispatcher, confirmed it. This violates every protocol, she said, shaking her head. You can't just send county-wide alerts from a personal device. Piece by piece, the truth unraveled. Mia showed that the HOA bylaws mentioned Lake Safety Authority, but no such power existed in any county records. Dean documented the old survey marks. matching them to the property file, proving without doubt that my steps were legal. Meanwhile, neighbors started getting nervous as more fake alerts rolled in. They realized this wasn't just about property, it was about someone abusing systems meant for real emergencies. Things escalated quickly. Meline launched a petition, spreading fear that my property rights would ruin home values. Neighbors started avoiding eye contact, some even signing her papers. Kids like Lucy and Noah felt it instantly children always do. Lucy drew a picture of a lake with Meline's face crossed out, a heartbreaking glimpse of how much this mess weighed on her. Then came the financial assault, a special assessment from the HOA for $3,700, supposedly for environmental impact caused by my steps. No other property got hit, just me. Dean exposed the fraud by calling the supposed contractor who confirmed no such work had ever been scheduled. Mia backed it up with county documents, showing the charges were made up to fund Meline's personal event plans. And just when I thought it couldn't get uglier, I overheard Meline saying, "Emotional pressure works faster than legal pressure, especially when children are involved." That's when it hit me. She was targeting Dean's grieving kids, hoping the emotional weight would make us cave. But the pressure backfired. Neighbors started realizing children were being dragged into something they had no part in. Some parents even offered to testify about how those fake alerts scared their own kids. And then, week 3, the hammer dropped. Officer Mark Lewis showed up with a Federal Communications Commission investigator. That's right, the FCC. They laid out the evidence in front of everyone Meline's phone records. The fake alerts, the fraudulent invoices. They confirmed the HOA had no authority over private property, no legal power to enforce those so-called safety protocols. The FCC agent read out the penalties, at least $5,000 in fines, permanent federal monitoring, and possible criminal charges for abusing emergency systems. In that moment, the neighborhood shifted. People gasped, filmed the announcements, and finally saw her campaign for what it was, not about safety, but about power. Deputies even took her HOA badge right there in the community hall. Assessments were reversed, funds reimbursed, and county officials confirmed our property boundaries once and for all. For Lucy and Noah, things finally softened. They were back at the dock with their rods, joined by other kids, laughter mixing with the sound of water lapping the shore. The fishing trip that had almost been ruined became the lesson they needed, that sometimes standing up against bullies protects not just your own family, but everyone else too. Justice came through, not just in court papers or fines, but in the calm of a lake where kids could fish without fear. And maybe the real takeaway is this: no matter how loud someone tries to shout you down, the truth has a way of echoing back louder. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments what you'd have done in my shoes. And if this story hit home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that standing your ground is worth it. Protect your peace, stand tall, and let your voice carry further than their noise.